Good morning. How are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit, and welcome back to another video. It has been a very long time since I've been on this side of the camera. I've been doing a lot of replayer stuff over the years, but you guys have been asking so many good questions, and it didn't make any sense to answer them with a replayer. It didn't really make any sense to answer them just with a basic slideshow, so I figured turn the camera on myself and start answering some of these. I've done this years ago, I want to say like 3 or 4, but I figured it was as good a time as any to get back to doing it this way. If you have any feedback on the format, any feedback on the editing or what the video looks like, please leave constructive criticism in the comments down below. But today's comment, or question I should say, comes from Francisco, who asks the following. Francisco asks, can you give a piece of advice on how to play versus fishy fields full of people who limp call every isolation raise? Thank you very much. So Francisco, this is a very fair question, and this dynamic is a little bit more common when you're talking about micro stakes online or some of the smaller live games, 1-2, 1-3, sometimes 2-5. But really this kind of game dynamic can break out at any time, at any stake, and really it's just when there's a bunch of people pre-flop that do not want to fold. They're going to limp, and they're typically going to limp call. Now the biggest thing that I can start with here, tip number 1, is going to be your size. And you know I talk about size a ton on this channel, especially when we're doing replayer stuff. But at the end of the day, size can do a lot of good or bad things for you. Now here's what typically happens in this game. There are a couple of limpers, and you decide you want to raise, and you raise to your normal raise size. And whatever multiplier you tend to use, be it 3.5x plus 1 for each limper, whatever it is, typically you end up with a raise size at 6, 7, 8 big blinds after a couple of limpers. Whether or not they're going to limp call or limp fold, people typically use their normal size here. And the big thing that I would suggest doing is try going larger, because you've already probably established that your normal size isn't generating the folds that you want to generate, which means that we need to try something else, and smaller probably isn't going to get those folds either, so what would raising larger do? More often than not, it's going to create a couple of different things. Either you are going to find out that they are truly inelastic preflop, meaning that whether you raise to something like 6 big blinds or you raise to something like 12 big blinds, they're going to call it the same frequency regardless. Or what more often happens is people are very comfortable facing the 6 or 7 big blind raise, and they're comfortable calling that. But as soon as you start going 8, 10, 12, 15, now all of a sudden you start finding people don't necessarily want to limp call everything preflop. So it's easy to say in your head, you know, I've tried raising because you raised your normal size and that failed, and as such you don't want to raise anymore, but really that's not the case. More often than not, if you try the larger sizing, you can do some really good stuff. Now, if you're constantly going to 10 big blinds and you're constantly getting 4 or 5 callers, okay, probably not the spot you want to find yourself in, particularly with some of those marginal hands, but never just say, okay, I tried my normal size and I'm done raising here. That's not the way you want to approach this game. Oftentimes you're going to find a larger size will either isolate you to a heads-up pot, even though a lot of people think, oh, there's no size I could try that will do that. Oftentimes there is, I promise you. So try that first before you just totally write off raising altogether. Again, larger sizing here is probably going to be somewhere between 8 to 12 big blinds. And again, this is over a couple of limpers, so it's not totally egregious. And honestly, I've gone even larger in certain situations. Oftentimes, it's just because I think, hey, I can probably get this person heads up to myself, create a better and more profitable spot, and then go forward and play it out from there. Now, tip number 2 here is that limping can be totally viable. So let's just say you've tried raising to your normal size, that's not working. You've tried the larger size, you're going up to 8, 10, 12 big blinds, still failing, still getting a lot of callers. By the way, that's really the kicker here, is that you're getting multiple callers when you're raising. If you're just getting a single caller, sure, you can still probably bluff C with the flop a large chunk of the time. But try doing that against 3 or 4 other players, that's not probably going to be the best situation for you. And there's going to be a lot of hands that you're going to want to get involved with, but if raising is not creating the best opportunity, why would we take the raise route? For instance, King Jack, Ace 10, Pocket 7s, right? Hands that we would typically raise with preflop, but if it's creating an SPR in a situation in general where our hand isn't going to perform best, why raise? Instead, let's think about limping behind. Now, clearly this is easy to do with smaller pocket pairs to set mine, or suited connectors, or ace-x suited. Those are the easy limp behind candidates, but if a raise is going to be worse than limping just because the situation sets up for yourself, then don't hesitate to limp behind with things like King Jack and Ace 10 and that stuff like that. And even things like Pocket 7s, Pocket 8s, hands that would normally get raised, if limping's better, then limping's better. Don't force yourself to raise and then put yourself into a bad situation. But here's what people normally do in this game. They start by saying, well, my normal raise isn't working, they don't try the larger raise, and then they really just sit there and start limping everything behind. And that's probably not going to be the best thing because, again, the larger sizing can definitely do good things for you. And if it doesn't, okay, we can limp behind, we can get involved. We just don't want to go nuts here, right? A lot of people will say, well, this is a really, really weak game and people are really limp collie preflop, so I'm just going to limp behind with like Jack Deuce suited and try to catch a flush. Well, oftentimes you're not playing in the deepest depth here, and is that really going to be best? Probably not. Use a little bit of discipline here, don't go nuts, but things like suited connectors, suited gappers, things like that can make a lot of sense to get involved with. Just don't start limping behind with like 7-6 offsuit every single time, or again, Jack 5 suited kind of crap, because it's just not going to really work out for you all that well. But if you use a little bit of discipline, think about your position, and again, being a little bit more limpy on the button than say from MP2, that can definitely work out for you. But again, think about the raising first. Don't just automatically default to limping. Think about the larger sizing. Is that going to be viable? And think about which line overall is going to set you up for the most profitable opportunity. And then the third and final point here is balance. Now, honestly, not a super relevant thing just in this dynamic specifically, but let's think about it nonetheless. If we talk about raising normal, that's not working. Raising large, that's not working. And then we decide to start limping behind our playable stuff and raising our really, really strong stuff. We are in a situation where both of those ranges are pretty face up. Raising range doesn't have any weak stuff. Limping behind doesn't have any super strong stuff. Okay, very, very easy to beat anyone that plays that way. And regs are going to be able to sniff that out and figure out what's going on pretty quickly. However, the reason why I say that balance isn't super important here is because how are they going to abuse you for that, right? If you raise, are they really inclined to 3-bet you light more often? Probably not. You have a lot of strong stuff in your raising range. If you decide to limp behind, are they really inclined to isolate you more often? Probably not, because you're limping behind multiple limpers, and as such, what are they going to do? Try to attack even more limpers now? And by the time it gets back to you, you're probably going to make a pretty good math decision. So how are they really going to abuse you here? Chances are not going to do it. So again, balance is important. Think about, do I need to be balanced in this spot? Am I giving anything away by doing this line or taking this strategic approach? Chances are in this game, you're probably pretty darn protected, but if it's say only 1 or 2 fish in the game and then the rest are solid regs who are thinking about this kind of thing, you may not want to approach such a very, very face up, limping, and raising range. Instead, you may want to think about how can I be a little bit more balanced in both of those ranges and then go forward. But again, more often than not, if you're in a weaker game, again, micro online or smaller live, chances are you don't have to worry about this too much. I just wanted to bring it up for being as complete as possible and how to think about this situation overall. Now, if you're interested in going a little bit further down the rabbit hole, I would definitely suggest checking out my book, Unfolding Poker, and focusing on 3 chapters in particular. The first is when should I change my bet size, the second is hand reading in fishy games, and the third is range advantage against weak players. This will help you look at this spot a little bit more holistically, and Unfolding Poker in general answers a lot of questions that I consistently get from players just like you. If you're interested, you can use the code YouTube to save $10 off either edition, either the ebook only or the ebook plus audiobook, your choice. Again, use the code YouTube and I'll leave the link down in the description box below. So Francisco, thank you so much for this question. Hopefully this helps, and if you or anyone else has a poker related hand or question, feel free to send it in at any time by going to splitsuit.com/ask. And of course, if you have any questions, just leave a comment down below as well. And if you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and hitting that little bell notification, that way you get a heads up whenever a new video is released, that would be excellent too. So again, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, as always, good luck out there and happy grinding.